channel, and we have another guest from Florida here today. His name is Matt. We'd like to introduce yourself to the viewers.
What's up, guys? My name is Big Matt. We got a YouTube channel, White Boy Lockdown Radio, from Florida.
Yeah.
Here just doing a little talking with Mitch.
All right, how you doing? So I met you through another guy I interviewed from Florida, Big Viking down there, and I guess you guys did time together, and you both reached out. He gave me a shout out for you, and then you contacted me, and here we are. So you originally from Florida?
Yeah, originally from Florida. I've been here my whole life. Viking, that's a good friend of mine. I know him in and out. Crazy that it was a weird time when I seen him on the yard, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
We went through a lot of stuff in there, but more importantly, getting out, getting to see him.
Yeah.
I do start families and just.
So did you know him prior to prison?
Yeah.
All right.
I knew him prior to prison through mutual people, but we weren't as tight or as close as as we are now. But yeah, right. It was a wild ride.
All right, so you grew up down in Florida, right? What part of Florida did you grow up in?
I grew up in Palm Beach, Florida. Was born there, and then my family, we ended up moving to St. Lucie County. It's on the east coast of Florida.
All right, so you like your home life, like you grow up with both parents, or you got brothers and sisters, all that kind of stuff, or what?
Yeah, I had two brothers. One of them passed not too over a year ago. I had a sister. Home life growing up was I came from pretty much a suburb family. But my dad divorced my mom when we were real young, and it was hard. My mom always been a hardworking woman, very hardworking woman, but after they got divorced, the money was low, short, so they kind of led me into getting into the stuff that I got into, you know what I mean?
Okay, so like when your parents divorced, you lived with your mom. Did your dad wasn't around after that, or what?
No, he was never around too much. Here and there, he'd contact us and stuff like that. He ended up dying years back, but he was never really you know what I mean?
So was there like substance abuse going on there, or just with your dad? Did he have issues, or your parents, or were they just pretty square, or what's going on there?
My dad, he used to drink. He used to drink a lot. You know what I mean? And he was never really around. But he drank, which ultimately led into them getting divorced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he died. He got hit by a car.
All right.
In Georgia years ago. But
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's all right, man. I appreciate it.
So like was there like abuse going on when he would drink, or?
Yeah, he would drink and he'd get physical. He used to beat my mom and this and that.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? So I had to see that type of stuff, as a young kid.
Yeah, I experienced some of that growing up myself, both towards me and my witness it towards my mom too. But I had a stepdad, so yeah. How old were you when your dad kind of got out of the picture?
That's probably about 9 or 10, right around there.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So did that have I imagine that had some kind of impact on you, seeing your dad drinking and the physical abuse that had a little impact on you?
Absolutely, yeah. I grew a little resentment towards him, and yeah, it absolutely had an impact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had this mom, she did what she did. She had to divorce him. That's
right.
It's her choice, but it made me just go out and try to provide for myself at a young age and get involved in stuff that I shouldn't have did, but we all make mistakes and learn from them. But
So you were going to school and all that kind of stuff, or how was that? I mean, how was your school
school was all
program
right.
going?
I did all right in school. I did all right up until about sophomore in high school, and then I started selling dope and this and that to try to buy shoes for myself, clothes for myself. You know what I mean? Because without my dad in the picture, money was real low. You know what I mean? And I got in at the wrong time. I got into it with the right people, and I was way too young getting into what I was getting into. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, my mom eventually divorced my stepdad, and when I was like 12, and then it was like the shackles were off. I just started running amok, and same thing, selling dope, and
Yeah.
there's things that you want when you're a kid you don't understand, like the concept of work and payment and money. All is like, hey, I need these things, and
Yes, absolutely. Completely agree with you.
like I would just steal shit. I would steal shoes, shirts, whatever stuff that
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't out like, I'd sold dope too, weed and LSD, all that kind of shit. So
See, the old paper hits, huh?
yeah, yeah. So how old? So you got into drugs then, kind of.
Yeah, I was burning weed back then, and maybe a little drinking here and there, but I was selling. The big thing at that point was ecstasy and stuff like that. I was in high school. There's a lot of kids here and there, and I was starting to make a little bit of cash, like you said, buying shoes for your feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had a little part-time job. My mom really didn't know what I was making, so as going through selling this and that, I would always, put it on the kitchen table for groceries and stuff. At the time, she probably thought, it was for my job, and you know, until it started to progress, and she kind of found out what I was doing.
Yeah.
She never supported it. She didn't like it, of course, but as a young man without father figure, you kind of have to go figure out how to get it get it how you can, I guess I can say.
So how old were you when you started doing this kind of stuff?
Started off about 14. 14 selling weed. There was no med cards back there. Nothing, none of these where you can people go now. They can just buy, weed off. It's easy to get it now, but this is back when it's Crippy and regs and all that stuff.
Yeah. I heard Florida's pretty tough with the drug laws back then. Even with weed.
Absolutely, they've always been. It's like a vacation retirement state. You know what I mean? So they've always been really, really hard on drug laws here. We don't have like a 3-strike. You guys still have the 3 strikes there in California, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of calmed down, but yeah, we still have it.
We don't have that, but they have other enhancements they can hit you with, and yeah, it's a retirement state, so they crack down on all crime, but especially drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What happened out here in California was they would do like when I got busted, my co-defendant got a 1-year enhancement for personal use of a weapon. Right.
Wow.
That was in 1979. And then, later on it went up to like 5 years, 10 years enhancements. I met a guy who he had like 75 years for a burglary. Wow. He only got like 5 years for the burglary, but he had like 70 years in enhancements. And then after that, they went to the 3 strikes where they could just strike guys out,
Yeah. I've read a lot of stuff about that in California. A lot of guys doing, like you just said, a lot of time for that 3 strikes, man. It's got to be clogging the prison system out. You would think that it's got to clog it up, overpopulated.
They built 33, 34 prisons out here, so they had to keep them full, and at one time we had almost 180,000 guys in prison. So
wow, it's a lot.
The federal court stepped in, and that's part of the reason why I got out. But So while you're like 14, you're getting into like smoking weed, maybe drinking or what?
Yeah, smoking weed, drinking. You know, I started selling a little bud, and you know, at the time I had a guy I was getting it from, and he was, you know, obviously a little older, and you know, he ended up giving me some ecstasy, and I would sell the ecstasy, and you know, it was when you're doing those things, when you're selling dope, drugs, anything of that nature, you kind of get you know, I did it because there wasn't a lot of money around in the house. Sorry about that, but it can get to be a little bit. I mean, it gets almost to be a little bit addictive, man, when you're living that fast life. You know what I mean? And it just I just kept going, you know, full force, and
Yeah.
then eventually the bigger things, you know. So
Yeah. So I heard there's everybody knows Florida, like if you're in the criminal element, you know, the drug thing, everybody sees Florida's a big cocaine hub down there. Were you exposed to a lot of the cocaine like shit too, or?
yeah, cocaine. Yeah, cocaine was another thing that I was doing. Like you said, it's huge in Florida. It's huge here. As far as cocaine, I used to dab in that. You know, I would sell the cocaine as well as years went on. I never really got into the crack stuff or anything of that, but you know, all that stuff is huge. It's
Right.
always been, even to this day. And they made a new law. There's a new law here. I don't know if they have the same thing in California, where someone is to get caught, you know, with a bag of cocaine rather than if it's cooked like crack. There's even an enhancement on that. They have that there.
I don't think so. I'm not sure because
A fairly
I
new thing.
once you're inside the prison, man, for me, all the laws that affected like drugs and all that kind of stuff on the street, I didn't really pay attention to. The only thing I focused on was the parole board and
Yeah.
life guys, things because I had a life sentence. So guys that have term to life, that's basically what they focus on. Any law that affects us, as far as the parole board and all that kind of stuff. So I lost
Yeah. You
track,
know,
but I don't think they have like mandatory minimums or for drugs out here. They just have like, drug. I don't know. It's weird. I've been out of
they,
the mix with that shit for so long. I kind of lost track. But what they have is like they'll strike them out. They give them a second strike, or like if they get busted with certain amount of drugs and they got violence, they could give them enhancements or some shit. I don't know.
you know, you speaking of parole, real quick. Do you know there is none in Florida? Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
No, there's no parole. They have no parole in Florida. Old timers, if they caught cases like before, they had it up until about the mid '80s.
Yeah.
And after them, so those guys, if someone was to catch time there, they're under they get different game time.
Yeah.
Then, you know, anyone that's in the prison now, they're going to do 85% of their time. But the guys that fell in the old system, they get a whole different 65%. So their game time's different. But there's no parole.
Oh wow. It's
Yeah,
probably a money thing, because parole costs money.
absolutely. What they
You know.
do now is if you get released from DOC now in Florida, whatever game time that you accumulated, okay, you have to do the good time that you earned inside. You have to do it on something called CRD.
Yeah.
So even if you go to court and you take, you know, to give an example, if you take a 3-year bid, okay, you're going to get 6 months good time, okay. So you're gonna do 30 months off of 36, but you have to get out. You have to do those 6 months on CRD. Isn't that wild? So it's
It's
almost
like a
100%.
community release type program, right?
Yeah,
So
it's all money.
basically, it's still, instead of calling it parole, it's something they just call it something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So So when you were selling dope, were you selling dope like at high school or just in the neighborhood, or were you like reaching out to people, or were they coming at you? Like, did you develop like a reputation as a guy that had the dope sack?
Yeah, really fast. I was selling it in school, you know, to my buddies and this and that, and you know, the way it happened so fast and so quick, you know, my name was, you know, floating around, and there's a few gangs in high school, this and that, but I would deal with all types of people. You know, I tried to stay like with the surfers and the skaters and that type of stuff, but people, especially with the weed and the ecstasy, I was selling to everybody quick, and then it would branch out into outside of the high school and this and that,
Yeah.
and I definitely got a name real quick. At the time, it was a good and bad thing, but yeah, it happened so fast. You know
So
what I
you
mean?
saying there was some gangs?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what kind of gangs were like you exposed to, like in your daily life, your neighborhood or school or whatever? What kind of gangs do they have?
When I growing up in school, there was a lot of GDs and folk nation and type of guys, and you had Bloods were starting to form, but you know what I mean. It was they were starting to form, but even in high school, small town, but you know, definitely, you know, a lot of gangs
So
there.
were those like white gangs, black gangs, mixed, interracial gangs, or what kind of stuff was that there?
For a little bit of both. You know, Bloods a majority black gangs. There's folk nation there too, or whatever they call themselves. They, you know, it could go either way. White guys, black guys. You know what I mean? But you know, even just have an experience with people like that at a young age. You know, I kind of got like a feel and understood. You know, I never endorsed it or liked it, but I got to see kind of both sides.
Yeah.
Dealing with those guys, I got to see like how they were structured and did things from the street, and then, you know, I would end up going to the prison, and you know, the way that it was orchestrated in there is completely different than, you know, outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So did you have any like biker type guys in your neighborhood or any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just guys forming like more so clubs. You know, to have the jackets and clubs. You know, no. There was a few, but I they were around, I should say, but more so guys that, you know, just form their own clubs, little cliques. You know what I mean? Those guys used to party a lot too, and they were into different type of drugs and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So did you have any experiences with you know, like negative, like people trying to get at you, like uh,
Absolutely,
when people sell
absolutely.
dope, like when people sell drugs, you know, sometimes you got guys that they think they can rob you, or like, hey, you know, you're in our
Absolutely.
neighborhood, or you have any negative consequences like that at all?
Yeah, not so much any like turf stuff or anything like that, but definitely people trying to rob. You know, plenty of times. You know, had guns pulled at me, been chased. They always tried to plot on me. Sure, I've gotten robbed a few times, absolutely. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just comes with it. You know what I mean? And but absolutely at a young age, I never forget. You know, first time I had a gun pointed at me. It was. I'll never forget that. And you know, I should have stopped then and got my shit together, but you know, I didn't.
Yeah, yeah, it's we tend to you know, dismiss all the signs that are thrown in our way, you know, along the road to you know, the places we end up. But so
Absolutely.
did you when did you first start encounter like law enforcement, like getting arrested or any of that kind of stuff?
Um, that was in high school. I got arrested. A buddy of mine. We were kind of doing the same thing. Somebody ended up telling on him. Okay, you know, for hustling a little bit, and he ended up going to the detention center. and I knew who the guy who told on him was, so I went after that dude, and, that was my first charge. It was tampering with the witness. A lot of people don't understand that, but you can't just go around beating up snitches. I learned the hard way, they protected, you know what I mean? So he told on my buddy. My buddy was in the detention center, and then next thing you know, I beat the guy's brains in, and then I'm in there with my buddy. So it was, but that was a bad charge. It was a it was a third-degree felony. But I was a juvenile, so I went to the juvenile pod and the detention center, and that was the first taste of incarceration. And
so how old were you when that happened?
16.
Yeah. So now you're in law enforcement's radar.
Absolutely.
And when you're a kid, you don't realize, that when you start getting arrested, you're on their radar. They're going to keep their eye out for you because they know where you're headed. I mean,
absolutely.
People think 100%. Cops are stupid, but they're not. I mean, they do their job and they pass on the information from one generation of cop to the next.
Yes.
Same way criminals do, So now you're on the radar. How much time did you do on that?
That was just an in and out thing. It was the first time I was ever in trouble. I did about, I don't know, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks in the detention center. I think, they have a 21-day thing here in Florida. It's pretty much your max little stay in the detention center, unless they decide to ship you to a program, or which ended up happening. But that first time was just a little 3-week stay, and they cut me out with probation. But I had to complete the probation to get the felony done off my record. I'm sorry.
Right.
I actually ended up completing that probation, but I got in trouble again a little bit shortly after that. There was again with the fighting. I was at a party, young and dumb. We're at a party, and my buddy's got into a little bit of a rumble. Hit a guy with a beer bottle, and that one led me back into the detention center. And that time they put me in a program. I had to do 8 months in a program. Yeah, as a young kid going into the program, it was tough because I got a real taste of what would end up happening. When I was an adult going to the penitentiary, I got to see
these programs you're in, were you locked down, or was it like wide open, or was it like a ranch or camp or something, or what?
At the program, as a level 6, it was just a little. It wasn't real too much lockdown. They want to push you to do your programs in there, the educational classes. They want you to get your GED and all that. But it was tough. I was only in there with probably 8 other white guys, and everyone else is black and Spanish. And it was just tough. A lot of those guys wanting to jump and this and that. It was tough, man. Starting off, got a little tough road.
So how old were you then? Like 17, around there?
Yeah, 17 at that time.
So now you're starting to get a little experience of people kind of segregating into their own groups.
Absolutely.
And then those groups kind of preying on weaker groups, or
absolutely, yeah.
All right.
I got jumped in the shower when I was in that program. Remember, I was in the shower, and about 4 black guys come over, right in the shower. They jump me, and I'm trying to hold my own the best I can, you know what I mean? But I'm not, I definitely got my ass kicked that time, and afterwards I didn't know what the heck it was about. And, literally it was, I guess they were intimidated. I was a little bit of a bigger guy, starting to work out, a young man. Yeah. And find out, it was solely just because I was white, you know what I mean? And I believe they were in a little gang, whatever it was. But yeah, I got the taste in my mouth at that young age about, inside versus outside, and how racially diverse it is in there, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of times, like one of them dudes would be like, "Hey, let's get this white boy," you know, and his other buddies might not want to get down with it, but they're all part of the same clique. So like, all right, fuck it, let's go, because they don't want to look bad with their homies, you know.
Absolutely.
Because
100% right.
you know, I had the same experiences through youth authority and stuff, and later on in life, I met a lot of them cats in prison, and it was a whole different relationship, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, they actually, some of them guys ended up, you know, as I met them as grown men, you know, they actually turned out to be fairly decent guys. Um,
Right.
yeah. So now you're down, you're getting down with the fighting, and you know what it's like to get busy as an outnumbered type of thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is not fun, but you know, it's part of the deal, you know.
Deal. 100%.
Yeah. Um, so after you got out of that, you have a little bitter taste in your mouth.
I had a little better, yeah, I had a little taste in my mouth, and I got out. I started, I got a little job. Things were moving. Things were moving, I guess, in a better direction for me. But I was, I hate to say it, at the time, I just didn't have. I tried to calm down a little bit, but I fell back into the pattern and old habits. I had a little job. I was making a kind of a measly paycheck. I had a little bit of time, from getting out. I had about 8 months out, and I just fell back into the things that I was, I guess, comfortable with, the things that I knew how to get money the fast way, the easiest, and
Easy money.
the better source of money.
Right.
So I ended up, getting back with the guys that were giving me what were giving me, and I started getting into pills, and just a whole different ball game now, because it was a different demon. It was a different type of people that I'm dealing with, not the average people that just want to smoke weed or drink. And that right there ultimately led to me, doing a lot of time, and also while selling pills, the Roxy's.
Oh yeah.
I know you know about it, but you missed that whole time. But I ended up getting into that, and it was kind of a downfall for myself, because unlike the past times where I was selling a little bit of ecstasy, weed, partying and drinking, I was selling these things and making money. However, I developed my own demon, and, didn't even realize that, I had a habit myself. You know what I mean?
So did you start taking these pills, like Oxycontin, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I was taking them, and I was
Yeah.
selling, I'm making money, and I was, you know, running around, high and this and that, which is not a good combination, because if you're trying to make money, you got to be on your P's and Q's at all time. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so, it was definitely not the smartest thing to say, but it was definitely a different source of income at that time, and I was just dealing with different people.
Well, now you're going from guys who want to party and have a good time to people who are full-blown addiction.
Yes.
And some of these guys are slamming them, shooting them up, snorting them, eating them, whatever. I mean, it's a full-blown addiction. People that buy Oxycontin, that's like buying heroin.
Absolutely.
So I heard dope fiends say they'd rather have Oxycontin because it's a guarantee high,
Right.
If they buy heroin, they don't know if it's gonna be any good or not, so.
Right. It's like a question mark. You're buying heroin, you
Right.
don't know. It could be, the last time you buy anything, you know what I mean? But, versus something from a pharmaceutical aspect, you know exactly what it is. But
Yeah,
like you said.
So these guys that are buying these pills from you, and obviously other people are selling dope to these guys too. So did you kind of get on the radar of other drug dealers, and then all the dope fiends, the guys that are after these pills? Obviously they know you're selling them. How'd that work out?
Yeah, I definitely got on the radar in a whole bunch of different ways. Going back to what you're saying, it wasn't just, what I was used to, people in school, friends of friends, this and that, it's all ages of people. People, yeah, now I'm 18 and, it's a whole different ball game. I'm dealing with people that are in constructions in their 30s, people in their 40s. I'm dealing with, married women, all types of things. And a completely different type of addict, I guess, as you will. And yeah, the radar, absolutely. As I was able to go now, and there was a big thing in Florida. You can go to, if you could literally go. You were able to go to an MRI place and pay these people cash, and they would write you a bogus MRI, which you can bring to the doctor. You know what I mean? And now, on top of dealing with other people, buying them for cash money to make profit, I was able to get them myself, right from the doctor, and not this one, many different doctors. So I was definitely on the radar because I went from I kind of went from selling weed and ecstasy to put shoes on my feet, help my mom out a little bit, into a whole other aspect of where, financially it was way better, and like I said, I just didn't realize I never would run out of these things. I had so many guys, as through a networking, I always had them, and I would always have my own prescriptions. Is I was, eating them all day, and I would never run out of them. I always had them, so I didn't even realize that what the type of habit that I had yet.
Right.
And it was wild, Yeah.
And so, earlier you mentioned you beat the shit out of a snitch, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously you have a little bit of a moral compass, like, you're not going to tell on people. You don't believe in that kind of shit. So, when you're selling dope, guys get busted, and then they go to jail, and a lot of them tell, right, to get out of jail because they're hooked on dope, and the cops know they're hooked on dope, and they want to get back to that dope. So,
Yes.
did you have any experiences with guys telling on you, getting busted and telling on you, or?
Absolutely. I ended up, I got about 7 years in altogether. First time I went was exactly that. It's funny, it's funny. You just said a whole mouthful. You took everything I was about to say right out of my mouth. But that's exactly what happened. It was a good buddy of mine. I know him my entire life. I went over there, sold a whole bunch of the Roxy's too, and he introduced me to I thought it was his uncle, is a big guy, you know what I mean, and sure enough, that was a detective right there. And what they ended up doing at that time was, that was one time that I sold to him. Keep in mind, this is a good friend of mine at the time, you know what I mean. He actually got busted for possession of something prior to this. The guy was only looking at like maybe 6 months in the county or something like that.
Yeah.
And he ended up earning on me. So I sold him the oxys then, but when the detective was present right there when he set me up, but I didn't know then. I just thought that was his uncle. They ended up doing something called, they held the warrant, if you will. So they didn't rush me. They didn't jump out and get me right there. I walked right away after dealing with them. And my buddy would call me and want different types of stuff. Another time he wanted some meth and some Xanax. So evidently I ended up selling him different types of drugs. You see what I'm saying? And then
they were building a case on you.
Yes. Yeah. I call it holding the warrant because, like, when I went over the first time to give them the Roxy's, they could have just, jumped out, tackled me, brought me in there, but they didn't. They built the case.
Yeah, but that would have been a weak case, and you probably could have got out on that with hardly no time. So they wanted to get you locked up.
Right. Yeah.
I know a case where a guy was in a motorcycle club, and he got kicked out or whatever, and then he came back. Nobody knew that he got busted. He was doing robberies to support his heroin habit, and he got busted. Then he went to the fellas. He goes, "Hey man, I owe these guys over here some money. How about giving me a little bit of speed, so I could sell it and pay my debt?" And they kind of liked him, even though he was out of the program, the club. They kicked him down, and then he kept coming back, and nobody really asked, like, "Hey, that was to help him pay that debt. Why does he keep coming back?" And the whole time he was wearing a wire. So,
Oh man.
yeah. So, they don't want to just put you away for a few months. They want to lock you down as long as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, you got busted.
Got busted.
Now you're in the county jail.
Yeah, went to the county jail. I'm in the county jail. It's a county jail at this time. Very, very. It's very, 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 very racial in there. You know what I mean? Walked in there, and it was overcrowded. It was overcrowded as well, meaning every bunk was occupied. I walk in there, got my bag and all this. CEO that brought me in there, he's like, here, he slides in this big boat thing. He's like, find a spot. But not only was every bed occupied, there's all these boats all around the dorm,
Boats,
it was either
like floor sleepers.
Yeah, floor sleepers, or those big plastic boat things. You could turn it upside down for a more. That's what I used to do. So you have a door, but I'm literally sleeping on the floor, and the only spots that I could put the boat in were under the TV, or under the steps. Okay, but right by the steps was the shower. People walking in and out. I don't want to see that crap. So it was unrealistic, man. I had to put the thing under the TV, and you could just imagine imagine sleeping on one of those things in a jail day room.
Yeah.
And it was
in our
it was
county
really,
jail, they just gave guys a mattress and they slept right on the floor with it.
wow, just a mattress.
Yeah, and then in the daytime they would roll it up and get it out of the way, so it's pretty nasty.
Yeah, absolutely.
People got no idea that haven't been in the jail. So, my experience with the TV room, man, is there's a lot of noise and a lot of arguments over who watches what and all that shit. So you're sleeping by this fucking TV, and you got your property, whatever kind of property you have, it's just right there out in the open, or what?
Right out in the open. I mean, this boat that I'm telling you about, it's just a big plastic thing with a little dib in it. It's just big enough where you could put a mattress in it. You know what I mean? But it had these cuts in it the way that it was, so I would flip it over and sleep flat, so I could put the little property that I did in the little engravement pieces, which was 4.
Right.
And it was right under the TV, and that didn't last that long because they're putting the TV on right after breakfast chow,
Right.
and it's on till 11 o'clock at night. And it's not so much the TV; it's everybody up there, standing there watching the TV, hooting and hollering.
Yeah.
You could only imagine the disrespect there. And this is my spot where I gotta live.
Yeah.
And it didn't go pretty.
So did you eventually get into a cell or what?
Yeah, I ended up getting in a cell. A guy bonded out. I got into a cell. I got into a cell there. There was no way that I could beat this case, okay? Because they had me. They got the audio, they got the video of not one but several times.
Right.
So I just was seeing what type of time they're going to throw at me at this point, trying to fight it. But I'll tell you what, county jail was real rough. A lot of fights, man. And I got to be honest, man. At least when I ended up going to prison, at least there was a lot of things going on in prison that I got into. But there was a lot more principle behind some of the stuff that went down in the prison and jail, man. It's just a lot of it's some stupidity, ignorance, man, and it's just unreal. You know what I mean? But
my experience in the county jail is, I'm sitting here fighting a life sentence on a murder, and I'm in there with guys that are doing, weekends, guys that are fighting burglaries, credit card shams, all that kind of shit, and I'm like, man. I was in the county jail about a year, And I got to where, you know, if the guys were in there for some bullshit charge, they were going to do like 6 months.
Right.
You know, I got really pissed off about hearing their whining and crying to the point where, you know, I'd smack them in the mouth. I'd be like, hey, man, why don't you shut your fucking mouth, lame? I'm fighting a life sentence.
Man, they put you in there. They put you were facing life, and they put you in there with people doing weekends. Are you serious?
Sure. The county jail just overcrowded, and they just threw them guys in it, you know. So, you know, I'd just tell me, you know, I don't want to hear it. And if they kept whining about it, I'd just crack them in the mouth. Tell me, get the fuck.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, that would irritate the shit out of you. I'm surprised they did that, man. I can only imagine how fun that would be. I never faced a life sentence, but I know I understand where you're coming from, and then you're not even sentenced yet, so you're so stressed. Yeah, I can only imagine that.
You know,
that's
they
crazy.
move guys around a lot, and you know, like I had a homeboy, this guy Ben. You know, he was in a tank that had a lot of white dudes. It's pretty even actually, and they had a little get down in there with other racial shit went off, and they dispersed everybody, and then they ended up putting him in a tank with 2 other white dudes, and then, you know, like 20 black dudes jumped on him. You know, but the cops set that up. See?
Right.
So I mean, it's just county jail's a motherfucker, man, because, you know, you got a bunch of guys that are just getting busted. They got to, you know, they're coming off drugs, all this kind of shit that affects their mentality, how they think and feel about stuff, and a lot of times the outlet is just violence, you know.
Absolutely.
And so you're white. Well, you I imagine you were pretty outnumbered in that tank, whatever that you were in.
Absolutely. I got in the cell, and that's when it kind of hit me, Mitch. You know, I was out there, you know, selling a lot of pills. Like I said, that I had unlimited supplies, eating them all day long. You know, and that, to be honest, I never even thought about it. But now I'm in jail and with nothing. Okay, I go into the cell, and yeah, I had a real bad detox in there. I actually had a seizure, and I wasn't eating. I had like insomnia. I mean, I remember, you know, I had a seizure. The only thing I can remember is they did the lunch chow. They called, you know, it's chow.
Right.
And I remember telling myself I should probably get up to try to get something in me. And I hop off, you know, the bunk, and I was walking towards the CO to get the tray, and I went blank. You know, the next thing you know, I wake up in medical. I got a big friggin' bump on my head, and I got, you know, a big, my nose is bleeding. I got a scratch here. I woke up. I didn't remember it. I'm like, man, the first thing I said is I must have got jumped. Like, I didn't even remember the seizure. The only thing I could remember, the only thing I remember is I saw a CO running at me, and they're like, you had a bad seizure. You know, you had a bad seizure, and they kept me isolated in medical. They watched me detox, and then I ended up going back to the pod. But yeah, I started thinking, like, you know, this is what, you know, this is what I've been doing, you know, selling this stuff. Imagine people who can't get it. My head was getting a little bit more clear. I started realizing, like, all right, just realizing what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you start realizing what you were doing to other people.
Yes, absolutely. It physically happens.
Right.
You know, so you start getting your feelings back. You start getting, you know, your conscience is, you know, you're feeling guilty, and your conscience is more clear. You know, so I had all these mixed emotions and this and that, and I went back to the pod. I started getting my little workout routine going. Still haven't heard from the public defender, and that's when stuff just started getting crazy. I got into a fight. I got into a lot of fights, but you know, I remember, because I'm not just sleeping all day detox anymore. It's done and over with, and like I said, a lot of ignorance, man. It's chow time, and got 2 black guys come out of the room. They're like, hey, you know, tonight's chicken, you know, just go ahead and put that over here. I'm like, what the fuck? They're like, yeah, just go ahead and put it on the table. And I kind of, like, I went like, yeah, right. And, you know, get my tray, go back to the little silver table, put it down, and they walked up, and you know, they're persistent about it. I need that tray. I need that tray. I said, you want the tray? You could have it. I probably had about 2 bites of food. I picked up the tray and I just cracked the one dude loose. Had to make a statement, man, because a lot of black guys in there were just literally extorting, or they were just putting down on all the other white guys.
Pressuring people out of their stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and
because they're coming off the streets too, and they're probably going through some kind of withdrawals, physically, mentally from drugs, and people don't realize too, when you go to jail, you got a little anxiety over being removed from the streets and all that. So
absolutely.
Also, they starve you in those county jails.
Oh man.
I mean, they starve you. So when there's chicken or any kind of protein meat, they're pressuring dudes out of their food. And you think about that, be like going to McDonald's or some fast food restaurant, and seeing a guy walk out with a bag of hamburgers and saying, "Hey, lame, give me your fucking hamburgers." Right?
Exactly.
I mean, nobody would do that on the streets, but in there, it's on the verge of desperation, because they don't feed you well. They starve you. And so these dudes are like, obviously, they're ganged up. They got homies. They're like, we're going to pressure these dudes out of their food.
Yeah.
And they have no concern about that dude going hungry. All they're concerned with is, I want that food.
Yep. Yeah. Like you said, it's a good analogy with the McDonald's. It's almost expected. For it to happen in there. Especially how less they feed you. And, like you just said, going to McDonald's, it's not even a thought in your mind that that's going to happen. You know what I mean? So it's just a different world inside, man. And especially the penitentiary, man. It's crazy. You know what I mean?
So now you're starting to get an idea that, like, hey, man, I'm going to have to stand up for myself, or I'm going to be preyed on.
Absolutely. And there wasn't many white guys in this dorm. There was a couple white guys. They were kind of like, they were more or less like hanging around the black guys. I think, like a fear thing, so I kind of like isolated myself from that as well. There was a few white guys in the county jail, just a couple of them. And we kind of started hanging out, talking to each other, this and that. And, so when we were able to order canteen and stuff, it was such few of us that would actually stand up for ourselves that we had to schedule, if I wanted to shower, I would have to go to one of them, bring my items over there. You know what I mean? Because at least I know he's going to watch, and vice versa, him with me.
Like, that's watch my shit while I shower, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the sad part about it is, they only, in the county jail, they only have rec. They say twice a week, but you'll be lucky to go outside in the dog cage for, one time. But it's still sun. You still can feel the grass, walk around, get some fresh air. You get tired of smelling jail. And, we could never really go. And it's sad to say, but there's so many guys in there, so many of these black guys in there that are just trying to take and steal that, we couldn't all leave the dorm. You can't bring all your items out there. So we would just stay in there. We started working out. And that's when I started really, really taking the working out to, a different level, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how long, eventually you got sentenced and you got shipped off to prison then, right?
Yeah. Yep. The state came, I took the deal. I never forget, there was an older white guy in the, jail pod, and it was my first time prison. Everyone's saying all this stuff, and I don't know if they're trying to make it like a scared tactic, or I don't know what they're saying, so I remember this older white guy pulled me to the side and he said, "Matt, man, you got your time." He's like, "I'm gonna give you some advice."
Right.
What's that? He's like, "Listen, when you get up